Today's the day you become a poet. And the good news is that you do not need to be a writer to make one. All you need is a marker, a page, and a little bit of courage. Because Blackout poetry is more than literary art. It's catharsis. It's about finding the truth in the silence between the words. It's transforming what is broken, forgotten, and discarded into something truthful, into something beautiful. Let's start unraveling. Alrighty, so the supplies you'll need for Blackout poetry is your writing surface, a black Sharpie marker, pencil, and then optionally, if you're going to be coloring it in, some pencil crayons, markers, or even watercolors would be excellent. Now, before we jump into it, I just want to give you a few examples of writing surfaces. So definitely, if you have an old book that you're about to recycle, this is an excellent art form to reuse that book instead of throwing it out. The other idea that I saw online and I thought was fabulous is using an old manual. So if you have any electronics or even furniture manuals, you often have nice columns of words, and that would work excellent too. And then magazines are absolutely fabulous. So lots of magazines have articles written in them. So that make it really nice to do your Blackout poetry with. And finally, if you don't have any of those at home and you don't feel good about ripping pages out of books, then I have these free printable short stories that I wrote, and I'm gonna leave a link in the description below, so you're free to download those and use that as your base for your Blackout poetry as well. All right, so the first step for our Blackout poetry is I'm gonna grab a pencil. It's nice to read over the text just once to kind of find the beautiful words or phrases that really kind of call out to you. So for me, I really love the name Grace, and that's the main character of the story. So I'm going to circle that. So some ideas to keep in mind with Blackout poetry is that you don't actually have to make your poem in the end rhyme. You can just kind of think of it this way, where you're either trying to find words that resonate with you, or if there's little phrases that stick out in a sentence, you can circle them, or even ideas. So for example, I love this phrase here where it says, "She never fit in." That speaks personally to me. So I want to see if I can find a way to keep that in my poem. So once you're happy with all the words that you've circled, the next step is I like to read my words from top to bottom. So this takes a few minutes, and sometimes too you'll go through the poem and you'll realize that there's words here that no longer serve the poem. So that's why we used a pencil and eraser, is that we can just go ahead and just erase it. So this is kind of like the second pass, and it's just going to solidify what our end poem is going to become. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them permanent by circling them with my black Sharpie marker. So I'm just going to circle them like that. All right, now that the words are circled with the Sharpie, now we have a few different options. So in your traditional Blackout poetry, you would basically black out the rest of the text and just leave the words that you've chosen. But there's other styles you can do with Blackout poetry, and I'm gonna show you my favorite, and it's actually one that a lot of people do as well. So what we do is we wanna connect the words in sequence with each other. So what I do is I draw a line from the first word to the second word, and then we're gonna continue doing that until we're done the poem. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna thicken up everything. And a little history about Blackout poetry, just in case you wanna know. The earliest history of Blackout poetry comes from actually Ben Franklin's neighbor, Caleb Whiteford, and he published a redacted version of the paper using puns. I thought that was awesome. But then Blackout poetry really earned its greatest support from Austin Kleon when he published his collection of newspaper blackouts, which was an instant bestseller. And a lot of people get inspired by those. So what I like to do personally is I like to read my poem and then really get the essence of what the poem is expressing and the emotions and everything behind it. And then I'm gonna choose to doodle the emotions that's been captured by that poem. Before I show you other examples of blackout poetry, I just want to read you the final poem. Grace never fit in. He was everything she wasn't. She tripped, he stood. She knocked, he gaslighted her. Heartbroken, she started to heal. She'd learn choosing herself and the good guy. All right, now I'm just going to take you through some examples of what I've made with blackout poetry. So the first example is your typical blackout poetry. So this one, I did that, and then what I ended up doing is I took a white paint marker and I just painted some simple branches and a sweet little bird on a branch. So this one was an article or a column in a magazine, and I did your typical blackout poetry with it. And then what I did was I chose certain phrases and words that really stood out to me, and I just kind of like bordered them with this like red marker just to give it a little bit extra pop. And then this is another way of doing blackout poetry too, because it does take a while and a lot of ink to cover the whole page with that black. So if you don't want to do that, you can go ahead, line out all of the lines instead of filling it all in. All right, so these ones is the style of blackout poetry when we connect all the words together in sequence. And then you could actually, the fun thing with this method is the sky is the limit. It's so creative. You can do it on so many different things. But with one of them, I ended up cutting out a piece of newspaper and then making my blackout poetry on my bookmark. This one was super stress relieving. So what I did here was I boxed out all of my words in my poem, and then I took a normal like black pen and I just started scribbling like back and forth, left and right, crisscross, and just got all this like energy out. And I actually didn't mean for it to be like a shape of something, but when I was done, it actually looks like the shadow of somebody. So that was kind of interesting too. Now these two here are super colorful. This one over here, I decided to do these anemone flowers in a group of 3. And then over here on this side, I really wanted to work with a beautiful bright rainbow and clouds, kind of like a bright sunny day. And this one here was very simple. I wanted it to be a field of flowers. I made this one too out of an article in this magazine over here. And I also left the title as the title of the poem. I hope you guys enjoyed the world of blackout poetry. And if you want another really fun tutorial to follow, then check out this newer graphic art tutorial right over here.